I'm choking on the water. Actual shock.
Choke on the water.
And drowning in my beer. Nice. Welcome to the edge of nowhere. Games at the edges of what we know. Monster Lore Tour Podcast. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 61st episode of the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Carr, here along with my co-host and the Neo to my Cortex.
Nice.
You thought I was going to say Morpheus, didn't you? Mr. Matt Ozero, a.k.a. the Moz. How are we doing today, Moz?
I like it. I like the Cortex thing. See what you did there.
I do actually want to kind of explain that intro and the Neo Cortex specifically for a moment, because there's a more profound pairing here than the usual, actually, for us. So this is from news-medical.net. The neocortex comprises the largest part of the cerebral cortex and makes up approximately half the volume of the human brain.
For most.
It is thought to be responsible for the neuronal computations of attention, thought, perception, and episodic memory. Structural similarity exists across the entire neocortex.
That's why you know the episodes. Episodic memory. You can get episode 17.
Yep. There you go. I must have a huge cortex.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that we have structural similarity, and that together we make up only half a human brain. Because this whole time I was thinking we shared a whole brain. I think it turns out we're only sharing half of one.
I think you're more the cerebellum. We need to think lower and closer to the spine and more lizard-like, you know.
Yeah, lizard brainy. Lizard brainy. That actually would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And we're off to a running start. Old business. I don't think I... Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. I do have stuff right here in my notes. All right. So first off, as usual, we'll hit some old business. I got a couple things from episode 59, Mothman, All Portents Point to Owl. I wrote this a while ago. Let's see what it is.
You changed the title, and thank you, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome.
I don't think I wrote that.
No, you did not.
Well done, sir.
Thank you. I mean, I edited it and then immediately went to name it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, all portents point to owl. It makes...
Well done, sir.
It just seemed natural at that point. But first, the Twilight Zone episode I was trying to think of is titled The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, and is the 22nd episode of the original Twilight Zone series.
I remember it.
And that's what I was talking about with the, anxiety monster.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, it's on the GooTube. So
Wedico.
You can watch it when we're done here. Second, I figured out which Care Bear I am. Because I said I had no idea what Care Bear I am.
Oh, yeah, because I'm Stormcloud.
Yeah, you're Stormcloud. I am Tesseract Bear.
Wow.
That means my heart is actually a 4-dimensional hypercube that contains an infinite amount of 3-dimensional space. So there is literally no end to my caring. My caring is infinite, Moz.
I'm not buying it. Hey, but if you're Tesseract Bear, well, hold with me for just a second here. If you eat human flesh, then you become infinitely Wendigo-y.
Whoa.
With it, yeah, because you have this, heart thing going on. Your heart is 4D hypercube. Whoa. So it would be this 4D iced hypercube. It would become iced over. And you would become the most monster. You could kill Bruce Willis as the...
You're right. The undrownable, unbreakable.
The undrownable, unbreakable. You just broke another segment.
I might have.
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
I'm going to have to save Tesseract Bear for the right
for the
moment.
Best defense.
For best defense. That's going to come up again at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah. You just eat human flesh as Tesseract Bear, and you're kind of golden. Well, not the rest of us. But you're
so you just turned a Care Bear into a hyperdimensional cannibal. Is that what just happened, Moss?
Yeah. Like cocaine does the right thing to you.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, and in conclusion,
I know I feel like we've already gone too far and we haven't even started yet. Wow.
Okay.
All right, let's take a breath, everybody. So this week we will be discussing the theories of panspermia. The panspermia hypothesis is defined by ScienceDirect.com as, quote, a philosophical thought that life migrates naturally through space, which states that the seeds of life exist all over the universe and can be propagated through space from one location to another. And there are 4 distinct types of panspermia, namely pseudopanspermia, which is a well-founded scientific theory, lithopanspermia, which is the transportation of organisms inside rocks, such as asteroids, comets, and debris launched into space by planetary impacts, which shield the organisms from the radiation and other dangers of space, also totally documented. Next, we have radiopanspermia, which is the propulsion and propagation of microbes through space, for which there is also evidence. And that's without the rocks to carry them. They're just on their own, free floating.
Free floating.
Free floating. And finally...
Mexican radiopanspermia.
Oh, I'm on a Mexican
Radio.
panspermia.
Wow.
And finally, we have directed panspermia, which is the process of purposefully seeding planets with new life. That's the whole Prometheus stuff right there, the whole aliens put us here to begin with. Any questions on that so far, Moz?
Nope, makes sense.
Okay. The concept of panspermia is far from new, and in fact, seems to go back as far as our history records. The book Our Cosmic Ancestry in the Stars, The Panspermia Revolution and the Origins of Humanity by Gensuke Tokoro, Kamala Wickramasinghe, and Chandra Wickramasinghe.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, has this to say about the ancient origins of the panspermia hypothesis. I'm going to have you read this one for us, Moz.
Buddhist texts made clear reference to the multiplicity of inhabited planets with direct implications for panspermia. Even earlier Vedic texts leave little doubt as to the widespread prevalence of the living worlds and of the life being a truly cosmic phenomenon. Recently, Robert Temple has pointed out that the antecedents of the panspermia theory go back into ancient Egypt to the Old Kingdom in the 3rd millennium BCE. This was a time when Egyptian civilization had reached its highest peak, and it is indeed remarkable to find that ideas of panspermia and cosmic life are so explicitly displayed. The Egyptian texts and depictions suggest that the whole cosmos is full of seeds and that life on Earth originated from them. Panspermia then appears to be as old as civilization itself. It's funny how everything we talk about gets back to themes that are as old as civilization itself. In this case, it's how civilization formed, but everything we talk about seems to just go back and back and back.
The owl is the only Egyptian hieroglyph that looks straight at you.
Yeah, like right through you, actually. Right. And I looked that up, and it was spooky to see everything on the side, and all of a sudden this thing's like, hey everybody.
Why is that guy looking at me, man?
Hieroglyph.
I think, the rest of them are all 2-dimensional, but the owl's 3-dimensional.
Yeah.
And which means
it's a tesseract.
If the 2-dimensional characters are 3-dimensional in real life, then if the 3-dimensional character is 4-dimensional in real life, right?
Yeah. And the 4-dimensional is...
Just adding to the theory a little bit.
There you
go. Back to panspermia. It carried forward through civilization from there. To give us more history and explain the concept itself more directly... This is from Panspermia Hypothesis, History of a Hypothesis, and a Review of the Past, Present, and Future Planned Missions to Test This Hypothesis by Yuko Kawaguchi. All links will be in the show notes. Speculations about the origins of life on Earth have existed since the dawn of civilization. The Greek philosopher Anaxagoras 500 to 428 BCE, asserted that the seeds of life are present everywhere in the universe. He coined the term Panspermia to describe the concept as life traveling between planets as seed. The other Greek philosophers, Anaximander and Thales, mentioned philosophical points of panspermia theory. Many famous 19th century scientists also wrote about this theory. Among others, Svante Arrhenius posited that microscopic spores are transferred through interplanetary space by means of radiation pressure from the Sun in 1903. In the modern formulation, there are 3 stages envisioned in this hypothesis: escape from a planet, transit through interplanetary space, and landing on a recipient planet. Each stage has since been investigated, lending some credence to the hypothesis. For example, the possibility of microbial spores escaping a planet has been supported by the capture of radio-resistant microbes from high altitudes on Earth. From the space experiments conducted in Earth orbiters and on the International Space Station, microbes have been found to survive at low Earth orbits under some protection from intense solar UV radiation, which could well be available for spores embedded within meteorites. Heating up in the atmosphere due to friction is the main problem during re-entry to the planet with atmosphere. However, because the time spent under intense friction is generally in the order of only a few tens of seconds, the amount of heat generated may not be sufficient to kill all the spores, especially if hitching a ride within the meteorites. We'll get more into that in a bit. The panspermia hypothesis has been modified and revived since its original proposal and has given a new perspective to the explorations on Mars, or the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn. We'll talk more on that later too. And it isn't only the scientific community that has been caught up in the concept of panspermia. The realm of pop culture has numerous examples of the panspermia hypothesis woven in as well. In most notable instances of pop culture panspermiation, the dirty deed of spreading the seed is accomplished by way of Comet. And which of the 4 types of panspermia would that be, Moz?
I don't know, I'm thinking about AC/DC and Wall Voodoo Mexican radio right now. Dirty deeds. I wish I was in Tijuana.
The answer would be lithopanspermia if they're actually inside
the
the
rock.
comet that
Inside
turns
the
into
rock.
the meteor that actually hits the planet. You know what I mean? First, we have what I see as the most iconic Hollywood example of panspermia. Any guesses on what that might be, Moz?
Like every science fiction movie ever, but sometimes they're...
Well, the original panspermia monster.
Day of the Triffids. The monolith monsters came from another planet, these rock crystals. And I know it's not the original, but I think of Stephen King turning green on us is probably better example of what would happen. What were you thinking?
You hit them all except the right one.
Okay.
The Blob.
Oh.
Our unfriendly, non-neighborly, gelatinous murder sack from the 1958 movie stands as probably the most iconic panspermiated creature in our modern lore. And do you know how it got to Earth, Moz?
Yeah, it showed up on a meteorite.
Hitched
It
a
came
ride on a
right
comet.
out of it oozed out, or this glowing thing was inside the meteorite, and someone touched it with a stick.
Right.
If I remember correctly.
Right. But to fit our theory into our conversation, actually, and to progress our panspermia
We should
knowledge.
poke it with a stick, is what you're saying.
Well, it was most likely inside a chunk of planetary debris from a massive celestial impact event that found its way to Earth. Mm-hmm. And Uncle Blob was hidden well inside the chunk of rock mass from its home planet to survive the ride.
Yeah.
Landed safe and sound and hungry as hell on that poor old man's farm. A tip to all you listeners out there, if a meteor lands in your yard and starts leaking some sort of gelatinous goo, don't touch it.
Poke it with a stick.
Poke it with the stick.
No, that didn't work either.
You can poke it with the stick.
It didn't work, though,
but
for that move.
Definitely don't touch it.
Yeah.
You probably don't want to go anywhere near it.
I don't know if the Blob, and I agree, like, I can't, that is the obvious one. I'm sorry. But at the same time, it's already a creature, and it's just eating everything here. It's not really doing anything except ingesting everything. I don't know. It's kind of reverse panspermia in a way.
Well, I mean, panspermia is just, to put it plainly, it's just the transmission of life.
Yeah, because someone else shows up and they think the blob was from Earth because it's here now.
Right.
But at the same time, it's not coming here and growing. It's just coming here and eating. You know, it's a.
I mean, what kind of panspermia it is depends on whether it did it on purpose or not. If it did it by accident,
it's directed
it's
or non-directed.
If it did it on purpose, it's directed.
Right.
Like if humans do eventually colonize Mars, that's panspermia. It's directed panspermia because we moved our life from one planet to another.
Right.
That's really the base definition of the thing.
Gotcha.
But to get back to our point here, though, with not touching the gooey meteors,
right,
and to get to one of the ones
you mentioned, the nougaty center.
Ooh. Yeah, lick it. There you go. Give it a good lick. See what it tastes like, kid. Yikes. But we do see a similar theme to the blob in the original Creepshow. This one you just mentioned in the segment featuring Stephen King.
Yeah.
The monstrous master of all things macabre.
Yes.
I believe is pretty close to the tagline he's used before.
Or macrame.
We see another farmer going out and touching some gelatinous goo, leaking from what IMDb describes as a bizarre meteor. This time, instead of unleashing the galaxy's largest predatory amoeba that we know of, the goo grows grass that grows fast, that grows on anything, any of it, or its original goo touches, and it itches. Oh, Mars, how it itches.
Yeah. I remember.
It itches! It itches! You remember that? You remember
I remember that, yeah.
It's a great scene, man.
Poor Mr. King.
So again, don't touch those gooey leaking meteors, kids.
Yeah.
Don't say we didn't warn you. We see this theme again, actually, in Creepshow 2 in the segment titled The Raft.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
It's kind of an homage, but some swimmers...
I've seen it, so go on.
You know, some swimmers are terrorized and preyed upon by what IMDb calls, quote, a monstrous blob in a lake. It seems they found the hiding place from the OG from 1958.
Nice.
Apparently the blob liked water. The from outer space part isn't covered directly in this one, but the obvious homage to the original blob, I believe, makes it implied. Right. Either way, it seems the Creepshow folks are big blob fans.
Yeah.
But, you know, of course they are, right? They're making horror movies.
Yeah, I like it.
And they grew up watching that one, so.
Yeah, didn't we all? I mean, I don't actually still remember this, but sounds like I've got to catch up on my Creepshow, too. I'm only up to like 84 in life, so that might have been 86.
It's hard. There's a lot of movies, man.
Yeah.
I saw a list recently. Was it 86 or 84? I think it was 1984. All the movies that came out that year, and it's like, oh my God, they're all huge.
Yeah.
Like everybody still watches all of them. It's crazy.
That's why we peaked.
Yeah. But so that's our basic pop culture references to lithopanspermia.
In a rock. I'm trying to think.
Right.
There's a lot of other ones.
There's
a lot of other sci-fi.
Right. It's when life travels inside
the rock.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Day of the Triffids was a good example.
I don't know if I even know that one.
All right.
You have to watch that.
But the meteor shower, and then the plants start growing, and the meteor shower blinds everybody, but then the plants eat you. So it's kind of like a two-pronged approach kind of thing.
That actually sounds like what we're going to get into next, which is the radio panspermia concept. The reference I pulled is from a work by H.G. Wells, a short novel called In the Days of the Comet, which was published in 1906.
That might be what it's based on, maybe.
It might be. It's no, it's not though, because this is a totally different thing. But this book predates the Blob.
Nothing predates the
Blob's
Blob.
arrival on the screen by more than 50 years.
Dang.
So this is again, the radio panspermia as opposed to litho.
Gotcha.
Litho is life forms transported inside rocks.
Radio just floating
Radio is
along.
microbes propagating freely through space.
Right.
Although,
dust in the wind.
Just to make a point, they are theorized to be shed by comets in their tails.
Right.
Which is apparently the mechanism at work in the Days of the Comet and Rise of the Triffids. Is that what you said?
Day of the Triffids.
Day of the Triffids. I'm going to have to watch that one.
Yeah. It's a classic.
Yeah. In this tale, in the Days of the Comet by H.G. Wells, there is an ominously green comet that approaches Earth on an extremely close trajectory. Unlike in the previous examples, however, this comet does not fall to Earth and unleash some sort of gelatinous beast or world-endingly infectious grass. This comet coasts by, bathing the Earth in its glowing green tail and raining down its magic green dust upon us.
That is what happens in the Triffids. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Radio Panspermia. That's another one I could have worked in here, but, I only have so much time. The effect of this meteoric fairy dust, in this case, is to knock unconscious all living things on the planet for a bit. And when they wake up, their entire perspective on reality is shifted, with memory coming back only slowly. Here is an excerpt from In the Days of the Comet, where the narrator of the tale awakes and believes the whole world to be dead.
This could be a variation of The Hangover, too, as well.
Similar idea, except I think those guys felt worse instead of better.
It shifted, though. Definitely shifted.
Poor little angry miserable creature. Poor little angry miserable world. I sighed for pity, not only pity for myself, but for all the hot hearts, the tormented brains, the straining, striving things of hope and pain, who had found their peace at last beneath the pouring mist and suffocation of the comet. Because certainly the world was over and done. They were all so weakened, unhappy, and I was now so strong and so serene, for I felt sure I was dead. No one living could have this perfect assurance of good, this strong and confident peace. I had made an end of the fever called living. I was dead, and it was all right in these. I felt an inconsistency. These then must be the barley fields of God? Still, in silent barley fields of God, full of unfading poppy flowers whose seeds bear peace. It was queer to find a barley field in heaven. But no doubt, there were many surprises in store for me. How still everything was. Peace, the peace that passeth understanding after all. It had come to me, but indeed everything was very still. No bird sang. Surely I was alone in the world. No birds sang. Yes, all the distant sounds of life had ceased, the lowing of cattle, the barking of dogs. But wonder, that gentle sister of fear, had me now. I saw a little way ahead a brown and crimson butterfly perched upon a cornflower. I thought at first it was the breeze that stirred it, and then I saw its wings were quivering. And even as I watched it, it started into life and spread itself and fluttered into the air. I watched it fly a turn this way, a turn that, until suddenly it seemed to vanish, and now life was returning to this thing, and that on every side of me, with slow stretchings and bendings and twitterings, with a little start and stir. I came slowly, stepping very carefully because of these drugged, feebly awakening things through the barley to the hedge. It was a very glorious hedge, so that it held my eyes. It flowed along and interlaced like splendid music. It was rich with lupin, honeysuckle, campions, and ragged robin. Bedstraw, hops, and wild clematis twined and hung among its branches, and all along its ditch border the starry stitchwort lifted its childish faces and chorused in lines and masses. Never had I seen such a symphony of note-like flowers and tendrils and leaves, and suddenly in its depths I heard a chirrup and the whir of startled wings. Nothing was dead, but everything had changed to beauty, and I stood for a time with clean and happy eyes, looking at the intricate delicacy before me and marveling how richly God had made his worlds.
Dang. You went on a little literary, that was an interlude.
I really enjoyed that. I definitely went a little long on that one, but that book's in the public domain, so and it's one of my favorite.
I've never read it, so
H.G. Wells, it's like of the Wells I have read, that's probably my favorite, and it's so beautifully written. I thought I would indulge myself a bit.
Yeah, you went deep into the Wells. I saw what you did there.
Deep down the Wells.
But tell us why the tangent. I mean, I get it in a sense. Like, this was just something that happened from space.
Correct.
Changed. There's a shift.
Correct.
And it's almost a reboot.
Right. In the end, the comet has changed all people. Like, everyone wakes up feeling like this guy. Apparently, all other creatures along with him that weren't there already.
Yeah.
It all becomes one big harmonious, all is one kind of thinker world. And and it just instantly, we were living in a utopian society.
You totally blew my hangover theory.
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite.
It's the antecedent of the hangover. But H.G. Wells calls it simply the change, and goes on extensively about how wonderful life is with all the different ways society does things now, and how wonderful we were all able to see the light and live in this perfect utopian way, you know?
You know, Bowie calls that changes.
There you go. But now I love this book. It's a true classic of the sci-fi genre, although it may not be so well known as some of H.G. Wells' other stuff.
I got to find if it's a book in the corner there, because I read all the Time Machine, all the ones we normally read. I got to find if it's in that.
It's probably in one of those, yeah.
Yep.
I see all those titles on the spine.
Yep.
But I do have one problem with it, though.
So do I. I can see the book, and if it's in there and I didn't read it, I'm going to be mad.
My problem is it's never actually explained in any way or even smallest hint what the actual changes are.
Yeah, how we got here. There's some gaps missing.
The characters go on at length about these wonderful changes
Could
they
be
have
Soma.
made.
It could be another Soma, kind of Brave New Worldy kind of thing with a drug that just made you feel this way.
It's very drug.
Huxley.
It seems very drug oriented, like the comet just drugged everybody, and it's like they dosed them with some super happy switch psychedelic or something, you know?
Yep.
But the characters go on at length about these wonderful changes they have made that made everything so wonderful for everybody, but seem as skilled as the slickest politicians at not actually describing anything they're talking about, just platitude attitudes. So you get left feeling out. You get to feeling a little bit left out in the end.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's something missing, something wrong, a little dystopic twang at the end.
But the point, as I think most Wells readers would say, was to get people thinking about the possibility of such a utopian society coming to be, forgetting the old ways that have held us down for so long and actually finding a new and better way of doing things that makes it all easier for us to just get through this world. It is a worthy goal, a positive approach, you know, and this, I pulled this one because it's totally different from the first ones, because the first ones, it's like, you know, world-ending bad things come from the panspermia.
Yeah, this is like sprinkling with your powder and glitter and rainbows and stuff.
Yeah, in this case, it's panspermia actually brings us to utopia.
Right.
You know?
This is the upgrade, reboot upgrade.
So I totally appreciate it on that level, but if you're going to go down that road as a writer, wouldn't you want to at least put forth some thoughts on some of the potential changes that you think might actually start changing the world for the better?
What would you sprinkle on another planet is the question.
Yeah, like he must have had thoughts, right? Like on how the world could be better and how the society would be different from the one he was living in. But he doesn't
say anything. Obviously.
He never, not even like the littlest thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
That's the one thing that, like, it's the reason I would give it 4.5 stars instead of 5. Like it should be a 5-star book. It's written like written like a 5-star book, but there's just this hole in it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So still read it if you're into H.G. Wells and you haven't read it, especially. I mean, you heard the passage; it's wonderfully written, and it really is a great concept. But just be aware that it's not going to tell you what the change was.
Gotcha. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Is it too soon?
Well, you know, it's 18 years old or something like that. So now for another radio panspermia reference, you can jump way ahead in time. We have
that's a different H.G. Wells.
That's his more popular one.
Yeah.
But we have the classic 80s flick, Night of the Comet. We're going to get back into the negative side of panspermia here. Do you remember that one, Mouse?
I'm thinking. It seems like a cheesy one. I remember the day the Earth stood still. Now when that happened, I flew right into the wall, 600 miles, because I was still going.
That would be direct panspermia. Directed panspermia. So that's going to be in the next episode.
Ooh.
This is a two-parter.
Right. So this one is Night of the Comet, and I just think cheesy. Am I on the right track?
It's definitely got some 80s cheese on it,
Yeah.
but for an 80s flick, it's really good.
You got me on Blob, and you're getting me an 80s.
And I saw it when I was at the
I'm
perfect
sad.
age.
I'm really sad now.
I saw it at the perfect age to fall in love with the leading ladies in it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I was like 10 or 12 or something, and impressionable young man.
Did you have any posters of Charlie's Angels when you were growing up? Because I did.
No, because you're way older than me. You gotta know that much. My correlation to that would be Alyssa Milano.
There you go.
I'm still in love with Alyssa Milano.
It's okay. Yeah.
Now I'm sad.
Okay.
Let's get back to Night of the Comet. This is the one in which if you suffered the direct effects, it's kind of like, let me jump back. In this one, it's much like the H.G. Wells in the Days of the Comet, where the comet like skims the planet and drops all its dust on. In this case, it's an ominous red one, as opposed to the ominously green one. But in Night of the Comet, if you suffered the direct effects of the comet, you were turned into a pile of red dust. If you received indirect effects from the comet, you morphed into some sort of zombie. But if you spent the night of the comet in some sort of steel box or some kind of metal, I think it was steel, you were saved from the end of the world.
It's like if you can climb into a refrigerator during a nuclear explosion. Same idea.
Same idea. You may not be surprised that not too many people spend any given night in a steel box, so there were very few survivors from the night of the comet. Most people are out like purposefully looking up at it as it went by because it's a big event, you know what I mean? It's a classic 80s flick if you can stomach the, cultural inequities of the time.
I still think I shut this off pretty early on.
Okay.
But go ahead.
We obviously have
or
different
it's my
tastes.
bad. Well, I'm just saying. I don't think I either liked it or watched it. But go ahead.
Then we see another type of panspermia at work in the mainstream zeitgeist when we watch Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock.
Now you're talking my language. Dr. Carol Marcus. Yeah.
The Genesis Project
There you go.
is a perfect example of humans committing rampant acts of directed panspermia.
Rampant on swangery.
Exactly. Very purposefully seeding new planets with new life and new civilizations to boldly grow where no life has grown before. do, 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 do. You liked that, didn't you, Maz?
Till you tried to do the ending sequence. Yeah.
I tried. I'm terrible at it. I apologize for that, everybody.
Well, you know what? You're Star Wars and I'm Star Trek. We've established that at some point. So
Well, my parents were
you're a little bit
Trekkies.
country and I'm a little bit rock and roll.
My parents are full-blown Trekkies. So as much as I like Star Trek, I have to always, at least outwardly, like Star Wars more because, you got to rebel against your parents and stuff.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So this is a generational thing.
Yeah.
I honestly, when you say Star Trek, Star Wars...
It's a next generational thing.
Ooh.
See what I did there?
I did. You Picarded me right in the face. Yeah.
Yep.
But no, if you say Star Trek, Star Wars, you just have to say yes. And then we're just working out the details as friends.
Right.
They're
They're totally different things.
I'm just saying, you got to like them both. And then we can argue from there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And to show more of the universality of the panspermia concept... Universality of panspermia, you see that? You have one of my favorite all-time zombie movies, titled simply Undead. This is one most of you may not have seen, unless you're really into the zombie stuff like I am. This is an Australian flick from 2003 and stands as one of the most unique takes on the zombie genre that I've come across. It's got twists and turns that would make M. Night Shyamalan question his entire existence, or at least his career. So without giving too much away, but still a little bit of a spoiler alert, there are major directed panspermia implications woven into this one.
Ooh.
If you're into zombie movies, you really need to check it out. DuckDuckGo, because I don't Google anymore. I DuckDuckGo now.
So are they using the zombies to clean up the planet as they're terraforming?
I'm not going to give away any more.
Okay.
But DuckDuckGo.
It's terrorforming, not terraforming.
We should make a movie called Terrorforming.
There you go.
But search for Undead 2003 and look for the cover with the person in the gas mask holding a shotgun.
There's a lot of them.
You will not be disappointed if you like zombie movies. I guarantee it. It's so good. And if you are, email us at monsterloretour@gmail.com and tell me why you didn't like it.
There you go.
And maybe we'll even do an interview where we can argue about it.
There you go. Sounds like I would listen to that.
That sounds like some good extra content for the member section, or at least, right?
I would watch it and then have to comment because there's a couple things I've not seen or blocked out of my memory.
Yeah. I like to try to forget most of this myself.
There you go.
But you also see directed panspermia at work in the Alien franchise, the movie Prometheus.
Right.
The opening scenes shows some sort of alien overlord type being literally using his own lifeblood to seed humanity on Earth.
Right.
This idea is based on some real life theories on how we got here, and they all end up at panspermia. What do you think, Maz?
I'm in agreement. A lot again, sci-fi. Depending on what level you directed panspermia ends up being a lot of sci-fi movies.
How do you think we got here? I'm going to ask you this again at the end.
Radio panspermia.
You're on a good track. All right, Maz is hanging in with me here.
I just want to make a wall of voodoo reference again. I don't really know what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, if you were,
wish I was in Tijuana.
if it was one of those multiple choice questions, you just picked the right one.
Yeah, see?
So at least you're guessing
That's
well.
how I got through my undergraduate degree.
Then we have a whole other perspective on panspermian possibilities. William S. Burroughs's little known but much pondered unrecognized virus. You familiar with this, Moss?
Dang, you're blowing my mind. I love William S. Burroughs. Every naked luncher should. But you're stumping me a lot today.
Yeah.
You're showing me where my holes are in my literary world.
Let me flex my English major muscles for you here for a second. This from Spectra Salon at AndreaBozic.com to explain. Actually, you want to read this one for us, Moss?
Sure. William S. Burroughs proposes the theory of the unrecognized virus present in the language, suggesting that the word has not been recognized as a virus because it has achieved a state of stable symbiosis with the host. My basis theory is that the written word was literally a virus that made the spoken word possible. This virus came from outer space. Now, I've seen it came from outer space.
But language itself, the word, is a virus.
Yeah, the linguistic.
Not wild.
Well, as I read more into it, linguistics has a weirdness to it that we don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, some Chomsky stuff going there.
Yeah, but to delve further into this concept put forward by Mr. Burroughs, here is an excerpt from a paper by Bernardo Attias, Attias, I found at ac-journal.com. Direct link, of course, in the show notes. Language, William S. Burroughs reminded us, is a virus from outer space. A virus operates autonomously without human intervention. It attaches itself to a host and feeds off of it, growing and spreading from host to host. Language infects us. Its power derives not from its straightforward ability to communicate or persuade, but rather from this infectious nature, this power of bits of language to graft itself onto other bits of language, spreading and reproducing, using human beings as hosts. The notion of the meme, coined in 1976 by Richard Dawkins to illustrate the field of memetics, crystallizes this view of the communication process. So this is not a social media meme. That was an usurpation of an existing term. Georges Bataille similarly argued that communication was best understood from the perspective of contagion. In Bataille, any human being is no more than a conduit for communicative process, a channel for ideas which pass through him or her. If, as it appears to me, a book is communication, then the author is only a link among many readings. The author is simply a node on a network through which ideas pass.
Wow.
This leads into another concept I'm sure I will delve into in the future, that of the mind as a receiver. I know you're into that as well, Moz.
Yep. William James.
But that is a lore for another tour. Here's some of my thoughts on the unrecognized virus as they pertain to today's tour. Many in today's world believe that animals actually think in pictures and communicate telepathically with these pictures. It's a different episode, maybe.
Back to Care Bears.
Yeah, there you go. But if we extrapolate from that hypothesis that humans may once have thought and communicated in a similar fashion, but then a virus fell from space that was adapted to the human form best of all, and it infected us with a virus that changed our brains from thinking in pictures and passing them along directly to thinking and communicating with words, as the words themselves are the virus. This is the perfect method with which to spread itself around. It has a near 100% infection rate, and if one who is unaffected crosses paths with people who are, you better believe the infection will be made to spread. History has taught us such. What are your thoughts as language as a virus, Moz?
So panspermia, something coming down here that is actually making us, moving us. Maybe it didn't infect the Neanderthals and they kept thinking more symbolically and more in images and more...
Clan of the Cave Bear.
And then we got this virus which actually propelled us developmentally forward, but was in fact kind of a, you have to check the terms and agreement and then there's an upgrade to Windows 10 kind of thing.
Right.
Dang.
Yeah, we got an upgrade from a virus that gave us this language. Is it better or worse is the real question. Because sometimes they update and it gets worse, Yeah. I hate how they do that.
I know. It is like, and it's funny because I've been coming across this more, the more abstract we get, language as an abstract concept comes into it, and I struggle with it, with even philosophy and Foucault and all these things I'm reading that I'm like, now we're talking about language in a way I don't really understand. It's so abstract, but they're talking about it in the terms you're talking about it, that it's something other and something to be, in a way, has more power perhaps than it should.
Yeah, and we will actually come back to that later on in our Panspermia saga here. But once you start looking for it, you'll see the Panspermia concept at work in a lot of entertainment, actually. If you search Panspermia on GooTube or Google, you'll find endless references and content on the subject. It fascinates us humans as much today as it did back in the times before time.
I saw that movie. That was with Doug McClure.
Yeah, there you go. And when you open yourself to the possibilities, they do seem to be endless. Just going to randomly throw this in here before we move along. Things like, if simulation theory is really a thing, is Tron a Panspermia movie?
Right.
Think about that.
Yeah.
And I refer back to a reading in episode 58, Lechuza, she's a black owl woman. Here is a clip. The Coachan also believed that owls had the ability to speak human words, and sometimes said the following to natives in the Coachan tongue, quote, "Not very long you're going to cry." So do you think the owls may be masters of the unrecognized virus, Moz?
So they can see the language and they understand what's happening, and that's why they're the messengers, and that's why they keep showing up during strange UFO abductions. They keep showing up during strange charged emotional moments. It's why they are a favorite of some of the shamans to transform into, and that's all tied in potentially. So what do you is that where you were getting at, or what are you thinking?
I honestly wanted just to hear your thoughts on it, because I'm not sure what I was thinking there. In that episode when you said that, I was working on these episodes and I was like, whoa, owls speaking words. That's interesting.
Well, the owl piece has a lot of telepathy involved with it as well. So a lot of these things.
I guess that's true. It's the voice in your head.
When we do the Cleland piece next, then there's going to definitely be, we're going to discuss this. Okay. So again, telepathy is planting languages and downloads And maybe this is how we started, is elemental forces, ultra-terrestrials, things that are here, or maybe something from another planet, was telepathically conveying some of this language to us. These download, we always talk about Robert Louis Stevens and the fairies told him all his stories.
This is the mind as a receiver, which I just mentioned
we're
a little
tapping
bit ago.
into things that are going on somewhere else, and that becomes our language because we heard it in our head when we were dreaming. We
are just the node through which the idea passes.
You're just a node.
From what I just read. So yeah, there you go. Spot on. Thank you very much, Moz. But let's get back on track here. Let me steer us toward the right direction. Where was I in my notes? For a more thorough look at the theories and potentials of the panspermia concept, let's start with the most provable of the 4 theories of panspermic happenings, namely pseudo-panspermia. All right, let's get wiki with it. Can you ticky this wiki, please, Moz?
Pseudopanspermia, sometimes called soft panspermia, molecular panspermia, or quasi-panspermia, is a well-supported hypothesis for a stage in the origin of life. The theory first asserts that many of the small organic molecules used for life originated in space, for example, being incorporated in the solar nebula from which the planets condensed. It continues that these organic molecules were distributed to planetary surfaces where life then emerged on Earth and perhaps on other planets. Pseudopanspermia differs from the fringe theory of panspermia, which asserts that life arrived on Earth from distant planets.
Okay, this is the whole we are all made of stardust thing that most people are familiar with. All matter in our galaxy was produced one molecule at a time in the heart of a star somewhere, then launched into space when the stars novaed, thus producing all things as we know them.
The shores of the cosmic ocean.
Yeah, there you go. This isn't a theory, but a fully provable scientific process. And if you try to argue with me about it, I will sick Dr. Arnett on you. He literally wrote the book on it. Check out his interview, episode 34.
There you go.
Guy helped measure the universe. It's pretty cool, man. This is happening all the time with every meteor that hits our atmosphere and every comet that sprinkles us with its fairy tale dust as it swings through our little corner of the universe. Everything that is the Earth and everything on the Earth and all the celestial bodies you can see from the Earth. How many would you say that is, Ma Zagan?
Billions and billions.
Yes, thank you very much.
Or Dr. Evil, you can go, gazillion.
Gazillion stars. It is all made from stuff that came from somewhere else. To this day, we're all constantly pelted with little bits of matter from far away reaches of space that fall to Earth and become part of our system. All of our water came here by way of pseudopanspermia in the form of frozen cosmic snowballs, only melting once inside the warming sphere of our atmosphere. This is something that most people know and understand to be a perceivable truth. This is good because it is as perceivably true as anything else we perceive to be true. Excuse me. So far, all very logical, scientific, not creepy at all. But here is where we begin our steps into the strangeness of where all this truth and logic leads.
And I just want to go back to Dr. Arnett for a minute, because he did talk about the distribution from the Big Bang. And, we really are talking about things got here from all over the place and ended up everywhere. And
Right.
it's just, we got to remember that because we feel like they're so far away, but no, all those elements are distributed evenly due to this explosion. And this is kind of what we're talking about. The same things end up in different places.
Yeah. It's like stirring a big pot of soup.
Right. And that's when what crawls out of the soup in episode 61.
There you go. But
Did I get the episode right? Because you usually do that. Is that I know this episode.
This episode.
See,
is
I'm in the
61.
now. You don't. You're in the past. You're living in the past, man. With your episode 14.
I'm living in the whole of time.
Wow. HOLE.
All moments exist equally amongst themselves within the whole of time.
don't
and
down me,
and they
man.
all actually happen at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
It's not. You're supposed to tell me when it's time to explain time. I'm going to get back on track here. We had this discussion once before.
Cyclic or linear? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, our conversations are cyclic.
Anywho, This brings me to our discussion on our next type of panspermia, lithopanspermia. Let us look at the process described by the lithopanspermia hypothesis. Then we will get into answering the question raised by this hypothesis. This is where we start getting deep. You ready, Moz?
Deep impact.
As you will recall from earlier in this episode, there are 3 stages of lithopanspermia. The first stage is escape. This is when, typically due to major impact events, rocks are broken off from a planet and ejected at speeds greater than escape velocity. At this point, in order to begin the lithopanspermia process, rocks containing living cells, bacteria, spores, viruses, and other various types of microscopic or at least very, very tiny bits of life,
or language,
there you go, must be inside large rocks, essentially pieces of the planet, hurled at enough speed into space to escape the home planet's gravity and be put on a trajectory for deep space.
This is like when the rock really hates his family and runs off to join the circus kind of thing.
Screw you guys, I'm going home. Many of the rocks that break loose during impact events will not escape gravity and will either fall back to the surface of the planet or end up in orbit as debris. Saturn's rings, for instance. But sometimes the impact is powerful enough to send pieces of the planet flying into space. The main question, when it comes to stage 1, is whether these life forms in the rock can withstand the heat and pressures created by the impact event and the ejection through the atmosphere and into space. Stage 2 is transit. This obviously is the transit of the life-containing rock through space to another planetary body that can sustain the life forms hidden within the rock. The problem here is, again, obviously, surviving the dangers of interplanetary space, not intergalactic, planetary, not intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic, planetary, intergalactic. Whoa, I gotta stop doing that. Excuse me. Where was I? Yes, the problem of surviving deep
interplanetary.
Space. Oof, that explains why I don't know what the hell's going on. We are all well aware at this point of the very unwelcoming nature of space when it comes to being alive. No air, no water, no protection from the radiation of the sun and the universe itself, extreme temperatures on both sides of the spectrum. Most unwelcoming indeed. So how likely is it for any life to survive a long trip through deep space?
You just need Jarrell to send you those audiobooks en route, you know.
Yeah, you need the little pod that Superman flew in.
Or Mork.
Well, that's the main question put forth by stage 2. And as we will see, it may be far more likely than many believe that these things could survive. Then we have the concluding stage 3, which is landing. One cannot seed life on another planet without first landing on that planet. You know what I mean, Muzz?
I've seen the sci-fi movies where it crashes and something climbs out of it.
So what's the main question raised by stage 3?
Can it survive the burning?
The atmospheric reentry.
Piece?
After the trials of surviving the trauma of being ejected from their home planet, and after the boredom and anxiety of flying seamlessly, endlessly through deep space.
Or Jarrell with the audiobooks.
How bored they must have been. Our transient panspermiatic little life forms still have to survive the harrowing ordeal of entering another atmosphere. This, of course, puts the rock and its little passengers through another shock of combined heat, pressure, and gravity that most life forms wouldn't be able to stand. So in view of all that, what are the odds of the lithopanspermia hypothesis actually playing out? Turns out a lot of attention has been paid to this question in the field of astrophysics. So we have some pretty strong answers to these questions. So let's start back at stage 1. The question is, put as simply as possible, can life survive being ejected from its home planet inside rocks? For an in-depth but far less simple explanation, which we will try to simplify down on the other side, we have the abstract from a research paper published by the journal Astrobiology in 2008. There are a whole bunch of authors on this paper, so I'm not going to name them all, but you can check it out in the show notes. Links are in order of appearance. I will say, as far as scientific research papers go, this one is pretty accessible for the non-scientist who is interested in the subject enough to have some existing knowledge on the subject, which you will have after these episodes. So if you want to know more after hearing this episode and achieving that initial knowledge, it is worth checking out. Anywho, the title of the paper is Microbial Rock Inhabitants Survive Hypervelocity Impacts on Mars-like Host Planets. First phase of lithopanspermia experimentally tested. It's a long title. And I found it on ifa.hawaii.edu. Here's the opening abstract. The scenario of lithopanspermia describes the viable transport of microorganisms via meteorites. To test the first step of lithopanspermia, i.e. the impact ejection from a planet, systematic shock recovery experiments within a pressure range observed in Martian meteorites, 5 to 50 gigapascals, were performed with dry layers of microorganisms. Spores of Bacillus subtilis, cells of the endolithic cyanobacterium Croococydopsis, and thalli and ascocarps of the lichen Xanthoria elegans, sandwiched between gabbro discs, which Martian analog rock. Actual shock pressures were determined by refractive index measurements and Raman spectroscopy, and shock temperature profiles were calculated. Pressure effect curves were constructed for survival of B. subtilis spores and Croococydopsis cells from the number of colony-forming units, and for vitality of the photobiont and mycobiont of Xanthoria elegans from confocal laser scanning microscopy after live/dead staining. A vital launch window for the transport of rock colonizing microorganisms from a Mars-like planet was inferred, which encompasses shock pressures in the range of 5 to about 40 gigapascals for the bacterial endospores in the lichens, and a more limited shock pressure range for the cyanobacterium from 5 to 10 gigapascals. The results support concepts of viable impact ejections from Mars-like planets and the possibility of reseeding early Earth after asteroid cataclysms. There's a lot going on there, so let's unpack that like an item at a time.
So yes, it can survive
Yes.
re-entry.
But in the end, we just got yes.
Yeah.
It can happen. So essentially, they recreated the conditions of an impact slash ejection event in the lab and found that it is absolutely possible for microorganisms in the seeds of basic life to survive the pressures and temperatures of such an event.
Yeah, we talked about all the movies from the 80s.
Yeah. I mean, the 80s got to be right?
And 50s.
From the 50s all till now. It's still happening.
It's still happening.
They used Mars as an example and showed that it is 100% possible for life to escape the surface of a Mars-like planet and travel into space unscathed. So question 1 answered. Life can escape its planet inside rocks, kind of like baby Superman in his space pod that we were talking about.
Or Mork.
Oh, yeah, Mork. Yeah. Right.
He had an egg.
I would rather take the egg.
Kids out there.
I drive a Prius, so I'd be very comfortable in the egg.
Wow.
Yeah, but there is more to this.
You know, if something goes wrong, though, everybody's got breakfast.
The ironic part is I can't even eat eggs. Oh, yeah. But there is more to this than meets the eye. For some hypothesize that the lithopanspermia process can actually directly affect the evolution of life forms being transported. Here is another abstract from a scientific paper published in 2021 by the National Library of Medicine that I found on pubmed.com. It is titled, quote, Evolutionary Processes Transpiring in the Stages of Lithopanspermia, unquote, by Anne von Hegner. You want to take this one for me, please, Moz?
Lithopanspermia is a theory of proposing a natural exchange of organisms between solar system bodies as a result of asteroid or cometary impactors. Research has examined not only the physics of the stages themselves, but also the survival probabilities for life in each stage. However, although life is the primary factor of interest in lithopanspermia, this life is mainly treated as a passive cargo. Life, however, does not merely passively receive an onslaught of stress from surroundings, instead it reacts. Thus, planetary ejection, interplanetary transport, and planetary entry are only the first 3 factors in the equation. The other factors are the quality, quantity, and evolutionary strategy of the transported organisms. Thus, a reduction in organism quantity in Stage 1 might increase organism quality towards a second stress challenge in Stage 3. Thus, robustness towards a stressor might in fact be higher in the bacterial population surviving after transport in Stage 3 than at the beginning in Stage 1. Therefore, the stages of lithopanspermia can themselves facilitate evolutionary processes that enhance the ability of the collected organisms to survive stresses such as pressure and heat shock. Thus, the multiple abiotic pressures that the population encounters through the 3 stages can potentially lead to very robust bacteria with survival capacities considerably higher than might otherwise be expected. This analysis details an outcome that is possible, but probably rare.
Moz Sagan just snuck up on us.
I don't know, it just happens,
So not only can life forms travel from planet to planet, but the process can actually strengthen those life forms into Superman-like versions of their former selves.
Ooh.
Seems like my Superman metaphor was well placed back there, doesn't it, Moz?
Yeah. Truth is stranger than kryptonite.
Yeah. And there is another aspect brought up in the original abstract here. The concept of this life not flying off to seed itself on another planet, but lingering in orbit long enough for the catastrophe on the surface to pass, and then eventually returning to the surface to restart the life cycle of the planet anew. There are some in the scientific community who believe this process may have happened on Earth way back, after the more cataclysmic collisions suffered by Earth in the far distant past.
Asteroid belt stuff.
Yeah, and we'll get more into that later on in the saga as well, but you have any thoughts or questions before I move on to Stage 2?
No, I'm following it.
Okay, because lithopanspermia Stage 1, proven. For the record, the paper I cited is just an example. These results have been repeated in a number of experiments conducted by different groups over the years. It is thoroughly verified that Stage 1 of the lithopanspermia process is really a thing.
Kurt Russell or James Arness?
Sure. On to Stage 2, transit. To specify the point here, for lithopanspermia, we are talking about life forms hiding inside rocky planetary debris, or potentially asteroids, meteors, comets, and such. This does not include the free-floating life forms that we will discuss in the radiopanspermia section. For now, we are talking about rock-bound life forms utilizing the protection of that rock. That's an important point. The questions presented by Stage 2 are twofold. 1, can pieces of other planets effectively travel to Earth?
Sure.
And 2, if so, can life forms inside these rocks survive the journey? We've already seen that these life forms can survive, as presented in the previous abstract, about the evolutionary impacts that the lithopanspermia process has on these life forms. There's less of them, but they're stronger. Basically, they conclude their trip with less numbers, but a hardier stock than when the trip started. So we'll focus on whether these rocks can actually find their way to other planets and touch down there in order to potentially spread the life they carry. To address this question, we have here an article from ScienceAlert.com published 5 May 2023 with the spoiler headline, "Almost 200 fragments of Mars made it all the way to Earth. But how?" Of the thousands of meteorites found on Earth, 188 have been confirmed to be from Mars. How did they get here?
Over the William J. Lepetamine Highway.
Somebody's got to go back and get a shitload of dimes. Yeah. Over the tumultuous history of our solar system, asteroids have smashed into Mars with such force, the debris was blasted into space and then drifted through space, eventually entering the Earth's atmosphere and surviving the journey to the ground. Astronomers once thought it was a complex process, with only the most powerful impacts capable of throwing rocks from Mars into space. But new research shows that it takes much less pressure than previously believed, which means there could be more chunks of Mars floating in space and on their way to Earth. A team of planetary scientists from Caltech used a new and powerful blast gun to simulate an impact on Mars. So not to harm any of the limited and precious supply of Mars meteorites, they used rocks from Earth containing plagioclase which is a major component of Martian rocks. Under high pressures, such an asteroid impact, plagioclase transforms into the glassy material known as maskelinite. According to the researchers, finding maskelinite in a rock indicates the types of pressure the sample came into contact with. Quote, "We're not on Mars, so we can't watch a meteorite strike in person," says Yang Liu, a planetary scientist at JPL and a co-author on the study. Quote, "But we can recreate a similar kind of impact in a lab setting. By doing so, we found it takes much less pressure to launch a Mars meteorite than we thought." Unquote. Liu and Caltech professor Paul Asamoah, not Asamoah.
I was going to say that was a misspelling.
Liu and Caltech professor Paul Asamoah said that previous experiments had shown that plagioclase turns into maskelinite at a shock pressure of 30 gigapascals, which is 300 times the atmospheric pressure experienced at sea level. But with the new and improved blast gun, this new study showed that the transition actually happened at around 20 gigapascals, a significant difference from previous experiments. Quote, "It has been a significant challenge to model an impact that can launch intact rocks from Mars while shocking them to 30 gigapascals, Asamoah said in a press release. Quote, "In this context, the difference between 30 gigapascals and 20 gigapascals is significant. The more accurately we can characterize the shock pressures experienced by a meteorite, the more likely it becomes that we can identify the impact crater on Mars from which it originated." This new research follows a paper published last year that was able to pinpoint the origins of the Black Beauty meteorite from Mars, as from an impact crater in the Terra Cimmeria Serenum region on the Red Planet. How do we know these meteorites are from Mars? Martian meteorites can be traced to the Red Planet because they contain pockets of trapped gas that matches data from missions to Mars. In particular, an experiment performed by the two NASA Viking spacecraft that landed on Mars in 1976 measured the amounts of different gases in the thin Martian atmosphere. Those same gases were then found in 1983 trapped within shock glass veins and pockets in a meteorite called Elephant Moraine 79001, and now in other meteorites as well. The new research was published in Science Advances.
So is the GPA, the atmospheric pressure explosion strength, is that based on a planet without an atmosphere so much as Mars, or is it one with a stronger atmosphere like Earth? Because that seems to, like, if you do something on the moon, it's going to be very easy to send something into space from the moon. Right. Mars, it'll be kind of, harder, but not as hard as Earth.
I don't actually really have an answer for you on that. That's a good question. I would imagine that they would be doing it based on the current conditions on Mars. There is an atmosphere. It's not very thick, I don't think. I would assume they were using like current conditions.
Yeah.
But in short, this tells us that stage 2 of the lithopanspermia process is a full go. So one more stage to go here. Stage 3, landing. Yes, we now know the Martian rocks can land intact on Earth, but what of the potential for the seeding of new life from the life forms carried by said Martian rocks? Can they survive the violent entry their vessel goes through as it crashes through our atmosphere and into the ground?
Yeah, Stephen King.
Yeah. It itches!
Exactly.
Excuse me. Yeah. Let's start with this and work our way into it. Here we have another paper published by Astrobiology in December 2005. It can be found on the National Library of Medicine's website, and the link is in the show notes. The paper is titled, quote, "Bacillus subtilis spores on artificial meteorites survive hypervelocity atmospheric entry, implications for lithopanspermia." Here's the abstract Moz is going to read for us.
An important but untested aspect of lithopanspermia hypothesis is that microbes situated on or within meteorites could survive hypervelocity entry from space through Earth's atmosphere. The use of high-altitude sounding rockets to test this notion was explored. Granite samples permeated with spores of Bacillus subtilis strain WN511 were attached to the exterior telemetry module of a sounding rocket and launched from White Sands Missile Range, New Mexico, into space, reaching maximum atmospheric entry velocity of 1.2 kms. Maximum recorded temperature during the flight was measured at 145 degrees Celsius. The surface of the post-flight granite samples were swabbed and tested for recovery and survival of WN511 spores using genetic markers and the unique DNA fingerprint of WN501 as recovery criteria. Spore survivors were isolated at high frequency, ranging from 1.2% to 4.4% compared with ground controls, from all surface except for the forward-facing surface. Sporulation defective mutants were noted among the spaceflight survivors at a high frequency 4%. These experiments constitute the first report of spore survival to hypervelocity atmospheric transit and indicate that sounding rocket flights can be used to model the high-speed atmospheric entry of bacteria-laden artificial meteorites.
So here we find that the landing portion of the litho-panspermia process will leave a certain percentage of surviving microbes in a falling object containing colonies of these little life forms. It also supports the earlier theory that the litho-panspermia process affects the evolution of the surviving colony in very direct ways. Essentially, it kills off a large percentage of the population while leaving an inordinate percentage of mutants among the colony's population. It's very X-Men.
Wow.
It's very X-Men.
Dang.
I assume these mutations are part of what allows them to survive the landing stage. It may also be part of how the colony adjusts so quickly to its new environs.
So does Dr. Xavier get there first, or the chicken or the egg kind of thing?
Yeah, like
Chicken or the egghead?
mutants come from space.
I know.
Or
but the
mutations come
mutations
from space.
are the ones most likely to survive, which
Yeah.
gives hope for us.
You know,
Personally.
you know what it really is. It's the toxic Avenger.
Yeah.
It gets
Yeah.
inadvertently thrown into a very hostile environment, but it comes out way stronger.
Yeah, and had more chicks eventually
Yeah.
in Traumaville.
Yeah. But the violent atmospheric entry process that kills off so many and produces a mutation of the colony may not even be a necessary step. Tell me, Maz, have you ever heard of something called a cold meteorite?
No. Boy, you're stumping me a lot today.
Yeah.
I don't like this episode.
This took a lot of research. It's a bit of a misnomer, but it turns out that not all meteorite impacts are as violent as we generally think, and that many impacts are gentler than you may believe.
Is this how the cell phone survives falling from the plane and you can still download stuff when it lands on Earth? You heard that story, right?
No.
But a cell phone survived
Out
falling
of a
from a
plane?
plane. Yeah.
It must have been a really good case.
And if it landed on Mars, then it would, maybe
Be lost forever.
Well, I'm just saying maybe the cell phone would give language to the microbes there.
Ooh.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yikes. Maybe you weren't following along as well as I thought, Mouse.
Dang. All right. That's the iPhone 12.
Wow.
You need the iPhone 12 for that. Yep.
I don't do iPhones. Here is how the Geophysical Institute at the University of Alaska Fairbanks describes what they call cold meteorites. Most of the meteors we see are tiny specks which quickly burn up before the meteor reaches to within several tens of miles of the Earth's surface. But what about those that do reach the surface and hence become
Gift shops.
meteorites? A meteor weighing from several pounds to several hundred pounds will indeed partially burn up before striking the ground. Entry to the atmosphere may be at speeds as great as 90,000 miles per hour, which is 40 kilometers per second.
Pretty good.
Roughly half of the meteor will be burned away due to heating, as the meteor is slowed down by the air. Depending upon the meteor's initial speed and initial weight, it will reach a terminal speed of about 45 miles per hour. All things considered, not that fast. It will reach that low speed roughly 10 miles above the ground. As the meteor falls, the last 10 or so miles, it cools off. Meteorites picked up immediately after they fell were usually no more than lukewarm. never has a meteorite of intermediate size been known to start a fire, even when landing in a haystack or in other combustible material. The slow final fall rate explains also why intermediate-sized meteorites penetrate so shallowly when they hit. Most go no deeper than a few feet. A meteorite weighing 2,200 pounds, which is 1,000 kilograms, that fell in Norton County, Kansas in 1930, made a hole only 9 feet deep.
That's a big meteor.
Think about Meteor Crater now.
Yeah, exactly.
Huge meteorites, those weighing thousands of tons, do not reach terminal velocity before striking the Earth's surface. Therefore, these can remain fiery until impact. The one creating the old but newly discovered crater near Bettles, Alaska, must have burned until it struck.
And Meteor Crater.
Meteor Crater would have burned until it struck. That was a big one.
No.
So with all the research showing that lithopanspermia can potentially occur even with the most extreme impacts, and adding the element of cold meteorites to our arsenal of knowledge, it looks like Stage 3 is officially a go. Are we ready for launch, Moz?
Sounds like it.
Sounds like it, yeah. But the question of potential is subterfuged by another big question. A question we have been asking ourselves since the discovery of Mars. Was there ever any life there to begin with? And did these many chunks of the Martian surface that found their way to Earth contain any of it?
I can answer that. You do that better.
The thing is, there is some evidence to suggest that there was, and that it did. But the evidence is not so good as to be conclusive. Here to explain it is part of an article from Space.com published 10 August 2016 with the headline, Mars Life? 20 years later, debate over meteorite continues. 20 years ago, NASA scientists and their colleagues announced they had spotted possible signs of Mars life in a meteorite. The claim ignited a scientific controversy that lingers to this day. In 1996, researchers from NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston suggested they might have found microbial fossils in a meteorite from Mars known as Allen Hills 84001, or for short ALH 84001. Scientists think ALH 84001 was originally formed 4 billion years ago on Mars and landed on Earth about 13,000 years ago. Such magnetite particles are not known or expected to be produced by non-biological abiotic processes. As such, the study team members said these crystals might constitute evidence of the oldest life forms known, with profound implications for the presence of life in the universe. Perhaps the biggest issue raised by the 1996 study is that we really do not have a good working definition of what constitutes life, Thomas Keptra told Space.com. At the most fundamental level, we still do not know whether the difference between animate and inanimate is simply a difference in kind or degree. In absence of such a definition, the search for evidence of life on Mars is plagued by ambiguities. Swindle concurred. Quote, "We've learned how hard it is to demonstrate that any fossilized feature is the result of biology," he said. And there goes one of the big questions we have been falling into here on the Monster Lore Tour.
Yeah.
Let me quote that again. "We still do not know whether the difference between animate and inanimate is simply a difference in kind or degree." This is something that came up in episode 43, which was your Crocodile Rocks episode, Maz. Would you like to expound on the whole where does life begin aspect of animate versus inanimate?
I was thinking Cartoon Network versus, just entertainment, something like
It's been a while since An Ancient Tooth Theory.
There you go.
Have you watched The Secret of Nim yet?
I have.
You did?
Yeah.
You watched it?
Yep.
Cool.
I think I'm going to comment it on it. Maybe I already did. We don't know. I feel like I have a comment.
I don't want to hear it until we're ready to really do it on
there
mic,
you go.
Honestly.
Sounds
We'll
good.
talk about that in a future session.
There you go. But no, I think that, did you, now it says do you know why this does really tie in well? I think, but do you know why? I mean, well, back to your first point here. It's back to immanence. That that sense of divine is imbued throughout nature. It's basically pantheism. So we're talking about that first of all.
Consciousness is a side effect of existence.
Yeah, but it's not this transcendence where there's a God separate, that just divinity is kind of sprinkled all imbued through everything, and that's that immanence piece of it.
Right.
But with the crocodile were-croc episode, it's a really good tie-in. And do you kind of know what I mean? You asking me the question? Did you? Why do you tie this in? I guess is what I would ask.
It honestly, that was one of my favorite episodes that we've recorded because of the conversations it led into, because there was a lot of that.
How's it tie into panspermia? I mean, how's it tie into rocks as far as divinity and rocks?
Right. Well, just the fact that the fossil is rock, and they can say, well, these things don't usually normally happen without some sort of actual life there to create it.
Mm-hmm.
But they can't actually prove that it was actually life.
Right.
But there are those fine lines that we discussed in episode 43.
Yes.
With the shape-shifting crocodiles.
Yeah.
For those who haven't heard it, to summarize, there are people who can turn in, it's a very shaman sort of thing in tribes in Africa, but there's people who can turn into crocodiles, and then there's rocks that can turn into crocodiles. And when they're both crocodiles, they can directly communicate with each other in the same language. And then when they turn back, they can then, or at least the person can then relate the messages given to them by the rock, which to me is the earth,
right,
to their fellow people, and pass on the message or the lesson or whatever it may be. And this, when I read it, where is the line between the animate and inanimate, and is there really a difference outside of the fact that one just moves slower than the other?
Yeah, you got it. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about. You actually kind of summed it up in a way that I couldn't have done it better. And I wrote that episode, and that's exactly right. You've got this, and again, we find these elemental forces coming out and trying to teach us all the time. And this is like you said, it's a shaman turning into a were-croc and a rock turning into a were-croc. And you might be saying, oh, this is the Bebelibe, this is West Bend, and this is just these superstitious beliefs. We have anthropologists who kind of say this woman's starting to act strangely, and she wanders off into the tundra or the woods, and she comes back, and she seems to be more stable and have more knowledge, and there does seem to be something happening. These are Western scientists embedded in communities for decades, and they're actually saying there's something to this. So are there rocks? And it comes back to crystals, which stores information. It comes back to all these things that before we started MLT, the things we all have our level where we scoff at, and this is the stuff I was scoffing at before we got here. I was like, I don't know what the heck the deal is with crystal. Now it seems like it's always elemental, or what John Keel would call ultra-terrestrials, stuff that's here. And this coming up through the land, there's this energy that does seem to be somehow conveyed to us through rocks, through crystals. Look at how the crystal is so embedded and entwined in all the shamanic activities and initiations. To me...
Oh, yeah, that's another part. Was that the crocodile episode, too? That was, they can actually yak the crystal and, ultimately turn
the crystal
into a crystal.
Is the totem.
Yeah, the crystal
becomes the totem.
It is the familiar.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, another variation of this that, again, makes you wonder, that line you're talking about, back to pantheisms, is imbued everywhere, and it can come through us? Can there be a knowledge within these things? And it doesn't make sense to a lot of us, but I think it's going to start to. It's going to have to start to, because the meme creating Dawkins of the world can't ignore this forever. I had to just get a slam on him somehow, because you mentioned him in a good way.
He did
came
coin the term meme.
Yeah, good for him.
Which originally it's basically a little strand of cultural DNA.
Yeah.
And they usurped the term for social media.
Right.
But
you usurp whatever you want from that guy. that scully muggle.
Most commonly when I use the term meme, I'm actually using it in that original definition.
Yeah.
This is how much of a paranerdalist I am.
Well, you did a really good job on explaining that, and if you didn't get a chance, it's a little bit of an abstract, deep episode, but check it out, Where Crocodiles episode, wherever the heck he said it was.
It's in my top 5. Episode 43, I said, right?
There you go.
Yeah, episode 43.
Nice.
All right, let's get back to the topic at hand. That was wonderful, though, Moz. Thank you. I really appreciate expounding on that. So we were at the point where we know the possibility of life being able to transmit itself between Mars and Earth as a panspermic example, but we can't be sure whether Mars ever had the life to spread. So to address this issue, I present a portion of section 1.1 of a paper published by Astrobiology on 16 December 2013. Want to hear it? Here it go. Take it, Mars.
It is theorized that Mars may have been habitable during the Nochian period, when the young planet is thought to have been warm and wet. Carbonates in the Allen Hills meteorite mentioned above precipitated in a fluid of 18 degrees Celsius about 4 billion years ago, when the planets were only 500 million years old. Early Mars appears to have been warm and wet, which would have provided prime conditions for the development of life. Thus, life from Earth or Mars could have been brought to other planets in the solar system, and any habitable niches may continue to harbor descendants of such life. It is even possible that life on Earth originated on Mars.
Holy crap, what did you say?
Well, I mean, Mars.
Could that really be true, Moz? Did you just say Earth life originated on Mars?
According to Ancient Aliens Season 2, Episode 4, and Season 17.
But you realize this means there is a good chance that life on this planet was at least partially seeded by the remains of life ejected from Mars in a cataclysmic explosion.
So Mars declared war, which is the god of war, on us.
Well, we may just be the result of inadvertent lithopanspermia from Mars. That would mean technically that we are actually the offspring of Martians.
Well, the Mahabharata talks about these big explosions that occurred on Mars.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what blew everything into the sky, which then actually that was too recent.
We were
way too recent.
There was a similar, somewhat similar but noticeably different life form on Mars that after the cataclysm, the seeds of all that life got brought here, adapted to this environment, and came up with us.
But wouldn't it be amazing if there was an earlier battle on Mars that actually did seed us? Explosions and nuclear, and they're blowing the heck out of things, and that's what actually the microbes that land here that creates us. So kids, war is good.
Or what if they wanted to improve their society, so they loaded all the useless people onto some spaceships and just launched them into space?
The Golga Frenchians from Douglas Adams' work.
Because Douglas Adams is always right.
Yeah, he's always right. Yep, we've determined that.
Yeah. And here's another thing. We've been talking about all this like it's a one-way street. But Earth itself has most likely committed some acts of panspermiation as well. Can't let Mars be having all the fun here, you know what I mean? Well,
yeah.
As we all know, the Earth has suffered her share of massive celestial impacts over the eons. Some of them have been cataclysmic enough to send chunks of terra mana out into the solar system. Earth life may also have survived back in the day only by escaping to space for a bit and then returning to reseed. We have one more research paper to look at to get the lowdown on all the panspermiate the bodies in our solar system have been spewing all over each other. Oh, sorry. That was gross. I was really trying to get through this without letting that go that low, but I just can't help myself sometimes, I guess.
I guess not.
Here is the abstract from a paper titled Seeding Life on the Moons of the Outer Planets via Lithopanspermia, published by Astrobiology, 16 December 2013. Material from the surface of a planet can be ejected into space by a large impact and could carry primitive life forms with it. We performed N-body simulations of such ejected to determine where in the solar system rock from Earth and Mars may end up. We found that, in addition to frequent transfer of material among the terrestrial planets, transfer of material from Earth and Mars to the moons of Jupiter and Saturn is also possible, but rare. We expect that such transfers were most likely to occur during the late heavy bombardment or during the ensuing 1 to 2 billion years. At this time, the icy moons were warmer and likely had little or no ice shell to prevent meteorites from reaching their liquid interiors. We also note significant rates of re-impact in the first million years after ejection. This could reseed life on a planet after partial or complete sterilization by a large impact, which would aid the survival of early life during the late heavy bombardment.
We used to call that last call at Sal's back in the day. The heavy bombardment period.
Give me 8 beers, please.
Yep, plant 1 bourbon.
Makes you rethink the whole question of why are we here, doesn't it, though? Now, when someone asks you that question, you can reply, because some huge-ass rock crashed into Mars a bajillion years ago. Does this create an existential crisis, Maz, or is it just a bunch of celestial bluster? That's the real question.
No, I'm thinking, this is my thought on this. So Mars is, someone said this at some point, Mars is our past and Venus is our future, and we're now, present, past, now. So we're present, Earth, past is Mars, it's now this dead planet, but it once seeded life, and maybe it seeded ours. Mm-hmm. We, as we destroy it, will somehow seed Venus. So we will be the Venetians someday.
Yeah, the problem there's very little life on this planet that would survive on Venus.
I'm saying with the microbes, the Martian microbes seeded us.
What we need is a Genesis project, and we do it on purpose, directed.
Carol Marcus.
It would be a much more comfortable transition that way, I would imagine.
We have to wait a few centuries before that,
Let's just pray we last that long.
Yep. I'm not seeing it.
And, one more thing I want to mention before we wrap up the Lithopanspermia segment of the saga. That is the potential of humans committing the heinous act of premature panspermiation. I hear planets hate it when that happens.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Anywho, what I'm speaking of is something officially called spacecraft-mediated panspermia.
Bang.
I guess premature panspermiation was a little too on the nose for them.
I'm not going to say what I'm thinking.
That's probably good. Before I say anything else, can you please read this excerpt from the previously referenced paper, Evolutionary Processes Transpiring in the Stages of Lithopanspermia, for us, please, Moss?
In addition to lithopanspermia, spacecraft-mediated panspermia may also exist. The analogous stages in a spacecraft would result in a greater likelihood of increasing the stress tolerance of hitchhiking organisms. Furthermore, missions seeking life elsewhere will frequently be sent to places where the possibility of life as we know it is assumed to exist. Thus, we not only can transport terrestrial organisms to places where they are potentially more likely to survive, but also may increase their invasive potential along the way. This analysis highlights further requirements that planetary protection protocols must implement and also provides a framework for analysis of ecological scenarios regarding the transmission of life, natural or artificial, between the worlds in a solar system.
This is a constant concern for spacecraft designers. Anything we launch into space is put through a rigorous sterilization process to help ensure that no Earth-born biologics go into space with the craft.
Did they clean those golf balls, Buzz Aldrin?
I would certainly hope so. A lot of problems could arise from accidentally bringing bacterial colonies or fungal spores or zygotic members of the microbial class on, say, a data-collecting mission to the surface of Mars. If the Mars rover brought some biologics with it, it could ruin the entire mission's data collection if it set that colony to growing and adapting to the Martian environment. If we aren't careful, we could accidentally panspermiate all over the solar system. Not sure Earth could handle all the offspring that could sprout from such a wanton act of incredulity. How do you feel about all this, Maz?
Well, it's like back to the Prime Directive, the Star Trek,
Oh, yeah, there you go.
You can't be doing that stuff. If you do it on purpose, it's kind of like that guy who actually he switches all the sperm out as the doctor at the clinic.
Oh, dude, that dude in real life, he had like 50 kids.
Yeah.
He was just, everyone got his sperm at the sperm bank.
That's directive panspermia.
Gnarly. That's a whole different kind of monster right there.
There you go. Episode
he's so monstrous, I'm not sure we could even handle covering that. Like, he's even beyond monster lore tour, maybe. No. Nah, season 4. Season 4.
Season 4.
I'll put it on the list. All right, but that wraps up our lithopanspermia section. That leaves us with the radiopanspermia, which would be life that can pass through the void without the assistance of a rock to hide it. And of course, the creepiest of them all, directed panspermia, which is the purposeful spreading of life from one planet to another.
The doctor from that clinic.
So let's get into that in next week's episode. Yep, we got ourselves a two-parter for the Panspermiations. Well, all right, I'm going to save all the closing segments for next week. This is very heavy information-wise to squeeze into two parts. I almost was tempted to make it three, but I think that might have been overkill. So we're going to jump out of here. Before you go, please take a moment to hit all those happy fun buttons on whatever platform you're on. Like, subscribe, maybe share with some friends. Really help us out. You can hit that auto download because that's what the algorithm looks at, is the downloads is our biggest statistic that we lean on. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/monsterlore to get early access to all these episodes and their corresponding side trails that come out right along with them in the member section. We are going to go record the side trail for this episode right now.
Yay.
So anything to add or subvert before we go, Moz?
No, well done, sir.
Thank you much. It's going to get a lot deeper next week. That's where the real monstrousness of this thing comes out.
Deep Impact. That was a monstrously bad movie.
Monstrously bad.
Armageddon was better. They came out the same summer.
Like Deep Impact makes Armageddon look like an Oscar winner.
Wow, yeah, it does.
But until next week, to all our fellow paranerdalists out there, have a good one. You licked what?
We don't have time for that.
I don't have time to do the licking thing right now, Moz.
Damn, dude.
Yikes.
Shut up!